It's the street that's named for a mountain the natives called Tahoma, but that was renamed after Peter Rainier in 1792 by his friend, British explorer George Vancouver. Rainier Avenue covers ground where Native Americans traveled on foot for millennia. The road stretches from 14th and Jackson as far south as Renton, where it turns into a freeway that goes all the way to Puyallup.
Well, it was 1891 when the streetcar started downtown, and they added stops and actually went to Rainier Beach by 1893, and then all the way to Renton. So somebody could get from downtown to Renton on Rainier Avenue.
Karen O'Brien says a trip on Rainier Avenue reveals a lot about the area's dynamic present and future, and its past.
When I drive Rainier, which is probably 4 times a day, I go back in time and I see the area like I want to see it 100 years ago.
From north to south, neighborhoods are spaced almost equally apart along Rainier Avenue. Just south of what's now I-90 was known as Gulch for the large Italian community that once lived there.
The Italians gave it that title because of the valley, so you've got the hills on the side and Rainier coming this way, and the smell of their great cooking with garlic would permeate throughout to the hills.
The equal spacing of the neighborhoods is because they were originally built around streetcar stops that had been laid out to encourage people to move to particular areas. York, Genesee, Columbia City, Hillman City.
Then you have Brighton. So Brighton, it was called Brighton Beach.
The streetcar went away in the 1930s, but the neighborhoods remain. And so do some fascinating glimpses of the past and the future, if you know where to look. First stop on our tour is the heart of the old Garlic Gulch at Tightwad Hill, where thrifty baseball fans could watch pro games without buying a ticket.
So we've got the left field bleachers moving over into left center and dead center field right on the corner here. Right field bleachers that way towards Rainier Avenue. We've got Franklin High School right over the center field fence, and Mount Rainier over the right center field fence.
Dave Eskenazi is an expert on Seattle sports history. Though it's a home improvement store now, this piece of land on the east side of Rainier at McClellan is hallowed turf, home of the baseball team also named for the mountain. Or maybe it was named for the beer. Emil Sick, owner of Rainier Brewery, built Sick Stadium in 1938. It was a steel and concrete Art Deco baseball palace, at least for its first few decades. For their one season here, Sick's was also home to the Seattle Pilots, the city's original Major League Baseball team. In retrospect, the Pilots seemed doomed from the start.
On opening day on April 11th, 1969, they were still pounding in seats, and there were people waiting to sit down to take their seats while the construction workers were still installing them. That's literally true. On opening day, they were still putting seats in.
Rainier Avenue is a busy retail corridor and has been for decades. One longtime fixture is Mutual Fish, founded by Harry Yoshimura's late father, Dick Yoshimura.
Well, it's been around since the late 40s and in this location since 1965. And we've just been a retail seafood outlet. We still have probably the largest selection of different types of fish than anywhere else, because we'll still bring in things from Hawaii and East Coast and all over.
And where did that name, which sounds a bit like an insurance agency for salmon, come from?
You know, my dad came up with that name. I asked him about it. He said, "Oh, I think it just sounded good."
Continuing south to Columbia City, Karen O'Brien says that neighborhood, with its storefronts and self-contained feel and proximity to New Light Rail, has a lot to see and do.
Restaurants, bars, and theater.
One thing you can't see anymore in Columbia City is the old Hit fireworks factory. What was once a place where dangerous chemicals were turned into patriotic pyrotechnics as recently as the 1970s is now a city park called Hits Hill. There's not a trace of the old factory left. But just a few miles south on Rainier Avenue, there is one historic artifact that you can still see. You can still use it too. It's an old streetcar shelter made of brick and concrete and still on the job as a bus stop. A few blocks south of there, an organization called Ethiopian Community in Seattle is writing a new chapter of Rainier Avenue history.
The Rainier Beach area, so many Ethiopians reside around here. The 98118 zip code, one of the most diverse zip codes in the nation.
Ethiopians began settling in Seattle in large numbers back in the 1980s, and Rainier Beach became a home for many of the recent arrivals. Rainier Avenue was a perfect place for a community organization. The group offers classes and summer camps and is in the process of creating 100 units of senior housing on property they own next door to the center.
I personally believe the Puget Sound area is a place which is next to heaven. This is a very beautiful area. So we love it. It's beautiful.
As Rainier Avenue gets closer to Renton, the road begins to hug the shore of Lake Washington. Not far beyond the city limits is the Renton Airport and the Boeing plant, where in the past, a lot of Rainier Valley residents helped build B-29 bombers during World War II, and where Boeing is still building futuristic passenger jets, which are a pretty good way to get a good look at Rainier Avenue's namesake.